And we are live. Let me make sure I got all my settings right. All right, audio, yep, good to go. All right, all right, all right. Here we go. Happy birthday. Why, thank you guys. Thank you. Yes, my birthday is tomorrow. So let's see. We got Mr. Tim. Happy birthday, Ben. It's my wife's birthday, too. Ah, good. Tell your lovely bride that I said happy birthday. God bless her and God bless you, my friend. Okay, tonight's show. Guys, we got to jump right into it. We don't have time to play around. Now, your favorite people at the World Economic Forum are putting out videos like crazy. Like, you may or may not know this, but they have a they have a YouTube channel. Check them out sometime. They are in full, and once you hear this, they are in full panic. The video we're gonna watch this evening. This is the title that they titled it, Keeping the Lights On Amid Geopolitical Fracture. They're in deep trouble. I listened to this earlier. These people are scared shitless about what's going on over in Ukraine. They know Russia's winning. They know Trump is going to win. Just listen to the things they say and tell me if this sounds like people who think they're winning. No. These are people who are in full out panic. These are people that are begging for money to keep the global structure up. It's why Joe Biden is every other week. Yeah, we're going to give them another $30 billion. You know, nothing to see here, nothing to see here, folks, nothing to see here. Because the House of Cards is going bye-bye. House of Cards, the hope that was holding the House of Cards together was the U.S. dollar, was the velocity of the U.S. dollar inside the system. It's crumbling. The markets are tanking. They're trying to fight inflation, but yet inflate. You see what you cannot. They are trying to fight inflation, but yet inflate their system. This happens every damn time. every time with communists, every time with socialism, every time. That's why it's predictable. And next week, well, actually after this video, we're going to watch another one that lays out exactly why they're scared. They are being destroyed by the decentralization of corporations, because the government is so tied in with the corporations that as the corporations are being destroyed through decentralization of the global employment fracture, because you'll hear this woman say, the key to our survival is money and education. What she means by education is this: we need more people inside the system. We need more slaves. We need more indoctrinated people, because the brain drain is going to the decentralized world. That's why on this morning's show, right? That's why on this morning's show, I explained what we're doing in Florida and how I explained how on Bloomberg, one of the number one investors in the world, when asked, what are you most bullish on this year? And he said Bitcoin. Her jaw fell through the fucking floor. This poor woman didn't know how to respond, because here's this god of investing, this titan of investing, one of the men that everyone looks to as, what's he doing? What are they doing? And when she asked, what are you watching this year? Everyone's on the edge. Tell us, oh wise man, tell us, what will make us money this year? The crowd goes silent. They lean towards their televisions, waiting with bated breath for the answer from the wise man. And he responds with, Bitcoin. What? Bitcoin? Excuse me, sir. Did you just say Bitcoin? Yes. I own a ton of it. I buy it all the time. I buy just enough that I won't push the price up on myself. You could have pushed this woman over with a feather. And his partner, the other smartest, one of the smartest investors in the world. Yep. I own a lot of Bitcoin too. They were dumbfounded. They were dumbfounded. Now, what's going on is the smart people in the economy are seeing what I've been seeing what I have been saying on top of the mountains for 7 years now. The revolution's here. The destruction of the old world order is here. The new world order is here, but it's not the one they thought they'd get. They thought she would win. They thought Trump would lose. They thought that the Bitcoin, that cryptos would just be a segment of the society. They had no idea that the Bitcoin would be the weapon that took them out. The last thing the World Economic Forum is going to see is a bunch of Bitcoiners smiling as they purchase the buildings that these old relics used to host their events. Now, I'm going to play this, folks, and I want you to listen very carefully to these people. They put this video up 8 days ago, I think. Yeah, like 7 or 8 days ago. The title of it is Keeping the Lights On Amid Geopolitical Fracture. They know that their geopolitical, that means New World Order, is falling apart. Geopolitical means New World Order. Fraction means we're fucked. Plucked. Excuse my language. Listen to how they talk and listen to how, please, we need the money. Please, we need slaves. We need indoctrinated people. Listen to this.
Fix this, and how worried are you?
Let me first wish you all a very good 23.
even if you don't naturally, IMF, deal with geopolitics, it's become also a part of your agenda. And if you see the fragmentation of the global economy now, is there a way to fix this? And how worried are you?
Let me first wish you all a very good 23. It is true in our economic projections, we expect growth to further decelerate this year.
All right, let me explain something real quick. When she says GDP, when she says, according to our projections, the GDP is declining and going down, think of GDP as their lifeline, their blood, their system. Their systems run on the GDP of the system. As the GDP falls, the system is dying. Think of the GDP as the blood pressure of the New World Order. That's how you should think of GDP. The American GDP is the blood pressure of the economy of America. The global GDP is the blood pressure of the global New World Order. So when she talks about GDP, understand as it goes down, they're dying. Their system is dying because the engine doesn't have enough power to push all of the blood, the currency, to all of the fingers and all the toes of the New World Order, all of the tentacles of the New World Order. They thought that they could just, well, as this happens, we'll just cut off a few tentacles. We'll be okay. We'll be all right. We just gotta cut off a few tentacles. Their blood pressure kept dropping. Okay, well, we'll cut off an arm. We'll cut off an arm. That'll save us. No. As the GDP goes down, as goes the system. Now, with that said, listen to her again.
Fragmentation of the global economy now. Is there a way to fix this? And how worried are you?
Let me first wish you all a very good 23. It is true in our economic projections, we expect growth to further decelerate this year. But since in the beginning of the year, we do seek some good news, here it is for you. We also expect in 23 growth to bottom out. In other words, to start the process in which we go up rather than down. Just to put in a context what going down means, 2021, we were quite optimistic. We discovered vaccines, COVID was retreating, and we finished the year with 6.1% growth. Then we stepped into 22. January, Omicron reminded us that COVID may be down, but not gone. And on February 24th, Russia invaded Ukraine. Abrupt slowdown in the world economy. We have finished last year with around 3.2% growth, 2 times slower than in the previous year. Now in 23, we expect the growth to decelerate to around 2.7%. We would come with numbers soon. And what we see in the year are 3 very significant challenges. Number 1, the war is still going on. And as long as the war goes on, it has a damning impact on confidence. Consumer confidence, business confidence, especially in the neighborhood, and I'm sure Pekka will talk about it. Number 2, cost of living crisis. Inflation that has been generated by multiple factors, but especially by the war, is hitting people, especially poor households, very dramatically. And interest rates are at a level we have not seen them in decades. And that is the third factor. High interest rates inevitably are going to contribute to a slowdown in the world economy. So let's put the question of fragmentation in this context. And the context is, it's not great. So when it is not great, the logical thing would be for us to reach out to each other and see how we can do better together. But instead, what we are seeing is more forces that are pulling us apart. So we asked a very important question. What is the cost of fragmentation? And we came to Davos with an answer. If we manage the adjustment to more security of supplies smartly, and there is some decline in trade, the cost would be manageable, 0.2% of global output. Not nothing. It is still not great when growth is low and we are struggling. But if we manage this poorly, if we allow trade to collapse, the cost would be in the order of 7% of global GDP. Just think what 7% means. This is about $7 trillion lost. The equivalent of Germany and Japan taken together. And then further work says if we add to this technological fragmentation, the cost could be somewhere 8 to 12% of global GDP. Why I'm stressing this issue today? Because we still have a choice to make and be wise and don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. An integrated global economy has served us all well. As a result of this integration, over the last 30 years, the world economy tripled. For emerging markets and developing economies, it is even more important, they quadrupled in size. But rich countries also benefited, their economies doubled. And all this means 1.3 billion less extremely poor people on this planet. And it means higher standards of living for everyone. So my appeal is to be very rational. Yes, we will not go back to the days when costs were the only consideration for where you allocate production and how supply chains work. COVID and the war told us security of supply requires some redundancy in supplies. In other words, there would be some cost. But if we are smart to keep that to the level where we make the economy, the world economy, more resilient, and not drag the world into a place where we will be all poorer and we would be less secure. My fear is that we are sleepwalking into this world. But hey, here is Davos. Wake up, do the right thing.
I think you deserve applause for that. Chris Coons, Senator, we know the US is still the largest economy of the world. What you're hearing also, Managing Director of IMF is saying here that a bit of nearshoring to avoid this notion of just in time and a little bit more just in case, building a little bit resilience is fine. But if we go too much into this notion of friendshoring or more protectionist measures, we can shave off a lot of growth globally. We know that there is a new House. There is also partly a new Senate. How far will the US go in friendshoring, making sure that things goes to Mexico and countries that you're allied with? Do you see the point of the IMF Managing Director, and how will the US balance this to make sure that we also will have growth in the years to come? And this will be a very shallow recession, if a recession at all.
Look, thank you. Thank you for your comments and the opportunity. I do think that American leaders and business leaders in particular recognize that the severe disruptions of the pandemic and some of the challenges of the reach and the scope of globalization that have caused a backlash in many of our countries, a populist backlash, certainly in the United States, need to be addressed. One of the ways to deal with some of our challenges in terms of the hemisphere and migration also is to do some nearshoring to improve the job opportunities in Central America, for example. But I don't think it will be as robust as potentially projected. I do think that we will continue to have an open economy, to be committed to free trade, and to see the robust value that globalization has brought to the world as well as to many of our people. This is a delicate point. It is unclear where a divided Congress might go in trade policy. But I do think there's been a lot of comment, a lot of concern about the Inflation Reduction Act, one of the largest pieces of legislation that a divided Senate just passed. A 50-50 Senate managed to do some robust things, invest in our own infrastructure, invest in our own science research, and invest in our own energy security and independence. I was encouraged to hear the comments from Ursula von der Leyen earlier today that we recognize that as we are implementing this significant investment, we need to do it with an eye towards our closest partners and allies, and to do it not just for our benefit, but for the world's benefit. I think one thing that is missed in the coverage of the Inflation Reduction Act is that a lot of it is an investment in new clean energy technologies that can benefit the whole world. Methane management and capture, carbon capture and sequestration, small modular reactors. So if you take the message from the Inflation Reduction Act that somehow America has become solely protectionist and that we will abandon multilateral finance, or we will abandon the global markets that have helped make so much progress over the last decades, I don't think that is a correct reading. I think it was principally about our energy independence, not an attempt to harm others or to isolate us from others. And I do think that the implementation of it will end up proving to be more positive for the world as a whole than was initially seen.
Thank you, Senator. Prince Faisal, Saudi, the kingdom, is one of the largest energy producers in the world. And in this discussion related to then cost of living, of course, oil price is also incredibly important part of it. So maybe you could comment on that, but also the region that Saudi Arabia is situated is not the most peaceful region in the world. And we know that one of your neighboring countries, Iran, the relationship there has been complicated. So maybe you could elaborate on both those two things.
Sure, thanks. So on energy, energy security is absolutely key. And here what we feel in the kingdom is that stability is absolutely the key to that energy security. So one of what we believe the successes of, for instance, OPEC and OPEC Plus has been, it has been able to deliver a relatively stable oil price, one that is predictable by both consumers and producers. Some other energy sources have faced significant challenges in that regard, significant rises. And we continue to be committed to that. We're also, of course, committed to a clean energy future. But the only way we can transition to a clean energy future in a way that doesn't impact the issues that Kristalina addressed, the issues of access and ability for the developing world to continue their path towards prosperity, is if we can ensure some level of stability and predictability in the supply of traditional sources of energy while we invest in renewable energy. So in Kingdom, for instance, is investing almost $200 billion in deploying renewable energies in the Kingdom and abroad. Our companies are active in 21 countries around the world, deploying solar and wind energy and other sources of renewable energy. But that's going to take decades for the developing world, especially, to be able to have enough energy for it to replace traditional energy fuels. In that interim period, we need to maintain a stable supply of traditional energies and one that is priced in a way that ensures that stability. And that, I think, we have been able to do. This is certainly our feeling, and we will continue to address that in a responsible way. Our neighborhood, you mentioned, and I want to really focus on the positive rather than on the negative, because our neighborhood is also showing signs that even in adverse circumstances, you can deliver success. The Kingdom's economy, for instance, is going to be this year the fastest growing economy in the world. Through a very ambitious reform program, Vision 2030, we've been able to transition the economy in a significant way away from a dependence on hydrocarbons, on oil, as a source of revenue for the government and as a proportion of the GDP. That process continues to go on. We are activating all kinds of areas of the economy. Unemployment is significantly down. Labor force participation is up, especially for women. So these are all signals that even in a difficult part of the world, you can be successful. And when it comes to Iran, we have reached out. We are trying to find a path to dialogue with our neighbors in Iran, because we believe very strongly that dialogue is the best pathway to resolving differences. And we feel quite strongly that what we are doing in the Kingdom and what others in the region, especially the GCC countries, are doing in addressing the challenges of their economy and investing in their countries, in focusing on development rather than geopolitics, is a strong signal to Iran and others in the region that there is a pathway beyond the traditional arguments and the traditional disputes towards joint prosperity. And I think the more we can build a sense of cooperation in the region, the more we can work together, the more we can deliver not just prosperity for our people, but also for our immediate region and beyond.
Thank you. The relationship with your neighbor, I'm thinking about the US here. After the summer, there were some speculations that there were some challenges in the relationship after the OPEC decision. Was that true, or how would you say it is today? Because we know that Saudi Arabia and the US traditionally has been very, very close.
So certainly a much less challenging relationship as a neighbor than the other neighbor we just talked about. But, but look, certainly, we have a strong partnership with the US, and we continue to work through that partnership. That doesn't mean we don't always that doesn't mean that we always agree. We sometimes disagree. We certainly disagreed on the issue of the oil market. In the end, we believe that I think our position was the correct one, and it showed through what we see now. The oil price continues to be stable. It's and we have a responsibility to the broader oil market, to the broader economies of the world, to make sure that we continue to provide that stability. But we're going to have a robust dialogue with our partners in the US. We're going to continue to work through any issues. But overall, this relationship has delivered significant benefit, not just for our two countries, but for our region. And as we continue to address the issues that Kristalina just addressed and that Senator Coons just addressed, we're going to need to work together. We are all going to need to work together. That means the GCC with each other, the Kingdom with the US with Europe. Everybody's going to have to work with each other in order to address all of these challenges. If we start getting hung up on minor issues, we are not going to be able to address the big challenges that face the world.
And you share this view, Senator?
Largely, yes. I will say one thing that has brought together Republicans and Democrats in Congress, the American populace generally, and most of our core allies and partners in the world, is opposition to Russia's brutal aggression in Ukraine. And so I think there were initially some concerns expressed by many of us about the OPEC decision. And as time has gone on, I would agree with His Highness that as the price has stabilized and as we've had more dialogue, we recognize there is a positive path forward for this long-standing, important relationship. But many of us remain concerned about the path forward for Ukraine and ensuring that there is a commitment, a stability, and investment that gives Ukraine's leaders and those who are fighting bravely every day on the battlefield confidence that they will encourage them with the knowledge that there are many around the world who stand with them.
We'll come back to Ukraine. That's one of the other elephants in the room, I think. But I would like to go from the kingdom to Qatar, to Sheikh Mohammed, Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister. The relationship also with Saudi Arabia is much better than it was a few years ago. I think we could agree on that, but there's still a region with its complications. Qatar is one of the largest exporters of natural gas, and I think Europe has been very pleased with also the LNG capacity. Where do you see natural, I have two questions. Where do you see the role of natural gas being a bridge between the fossil fuel-based society and the renewable society, Qatar's role there? And second question is that we are talking about a lot of conflicts in the world, and Qatar also has played a role under your leadership as important in peace and reconciliation. But I think we're seeing it in many of the conflicts. It's very difficult because we can bring the horses to the well, but it's impossible to make them drink the water. And I would love to, for example, hear your comment on the latest development in Afghanistan that has been a great concern for all of us. So, Sheikh Mohammed.
First of all, thank you, Borgi, for inviting me here, and I'm really pleased to be among such a distinguished speakers and attendance here. Regarding the first part of your question about the energy and the role of the LNG, we believe in Qatar as the gas is a safer, cleaner, and more reliable source of energy, and we believe that the gas will remain relevant and a destination fuel, and it is very important in the energy mix for the next decades to come. Now, when it comes to the transition agenda, unfortunately, a lot of the policymakers, they have set unattainable goals, like very aspirational goals, that they didn't realize that this will need time, will need a significant amount of investment. And also they stopped or didn't allow investments in the last 10 years, probably. And we have seen that this energy poverty, which unfortunately been accelerated because of the war in Ukraine, it is a result of these policies. So I believe that this underinvestment, which Qatar didn't follow, luckily, allowed us now to have this additional capacity, which will become online in 2027 in order to bring more gas to the market, and especially to Europe now, since they are diversifying also their source. We believe that the energy mix, taking it in consideration, very important to keep the gas, to diversify also the sources, but also to keep in consideration the other sources of energy until they reach these goals. I think also from another perspective, it's also unfair for a lot of developing countries to demand them not to develop their own resources and not to be energy independent while they are still in need for their development journey. And a lot of countries around the world, actually, they are seeing the wealthier countries being unfair for them in demanding them to stop to develop their own resources. The third point on this, I'm not sure if there was an honest discussion about also this transition agenda and what kind of damage it might create for the earth when we are talking about mining the rare earth, or also mining the metals to use them as an input for all those renewable energy equipment. So we believe that it should be a deeper conversation, more inclusive. All the countries needs to be included in that conversation, not only the G7 or the developed countries to set the agenda for the world. Regarding our role in the conflict resolution, and as you mentioned, Borge, very correctly, that it's not an easy job. It's maybe it is a difficult journey to bring parties with disagreements together to reach an agreement, but it's also more difficult to sustain the agreement. And we recognize the fact that it's not easy for a country like Afghanistan, which suffered not only in the last 20 years of war, but really beyond that, probably in the last 40 years, and they've been fighting with each other. We cannot expect that an agreement that happened between them and the US will bring peace to the country in 1 day or 1 year. Especially there were no a real dialogue between the parties of the war themselves. I mean, the inter-Afghan dialogue didn't take place properly. What happened recently and the recent measures by the Taliban government in Afghanistan has been very disappointing for us, and we've been warning them from taking such decisions that are going just to make the situation much worse for the Afghan people, but also for the international community to be able to deal with them. Does it mean that we are going to stop our efforts? No, we should continue. We always remain hopeful that the way we are engaging with others, we are engaging with people who are sometimes difficult to talk to. It's the only way forward to find a resolution. Otherwise, what would be the alternative? The alternative would be a civil war, social unrest in the country, which is going to blow up for the entire region.
So on the latter, I think when we have a dialogue with the players in Kabul is one thing, but decision makers are also in Kandahar. Do you think there is a hope in the near future to get the dialogue on this and change the decisions, or are we talking more medium, long term?
Well, from the beginning, we've been trying our best in order to reach out to them, either directly by us, but also by other countries in the region, and especially the Muslim countries, where we see them playing a major role in such issues, especially the social and the economic issues for Afghanistan. We've been trying even to reach out to Kandahar and to have a dialogue with them. Until now, we didn't succeed, but we are in a continuous consultation with other countries in the region, with some Muslim countries, in order to go and to reach out to them as a group of countries and to talk to them about these issues and about these measures that have been unfortunately taken without any rationale, and they couldn't even rationalize it for us, the ones who are talking to them. So I believe it's not going to be an easy job, but it's very important to keep trying and to keep insisting to drive this change until we see a real change happening there on the ground.
No, thank you. It's about a whole generation of girls and women's rights to education. So we hope all that there will be a way of breaking that impasse. I said to Senator Coons that we were going to come back to Europe. There is a war in Europe. And Pekka Haavisto, we've known each other for many years. Pekka was also a presidential candidate for the Greens. You became foreign minister in probably the most demanding time for and challenging time for your country in decades. Had you ever reflected on that you, as a Green, was the one that was going to bring Finland into NATO?
Well. Actually, we had this kind of very rapid NATO debate in Finland, which started 24th of February last year and ended in May when we tabled our NATO documents. And of course, we were so happy to get Sweden on board. I have to say that I was more skeptical with the Swedish possibilities after 200 years of neutrality to join. It was a bigger,
changing religion, huh?
Yeah, it was a bigger issue there as.
All right, guys, let's actually take a break real quick. Grab a cigarette or something like that. I know it's hard watching these and listening to them, but the reason we're doing it is extremely important, because as this all comes crashing down, we need to be able to explain to our friends around us what's going on. And if we've watched the relevant interviews, the relevant lectures, the relevant events, as we're explaining to, yes, and learning their language, that's a key. Learning how they twist the language. And that way, as we bring our friends and family into the new system, they understand why. They understand why they're leaving it. They understand that the old system was not made to help them. And more people are realizing the old system for the last, and I'll just say 3 years, but it's been longer. For the last 2 or 3 years, they have been directly, physically assaulting us and trying to eliminate us. As more and more people recognize that it was a choice to eliminate people. That is called genocide. All right? That's called genocide. These people have been trying to kill us out in the open, blatantly, for 3 years now. As that sinks in, your friends are going to need you. Your friends, you're going to go from the conspiracy friend to the oh shit, what do I do friend. And that's going to require a knowledge base of what happened. You need to be able to reference this. Even if your friend doesn't check you on it, you know, if you say, look, I just watched a World Economic Forum presentation on geopolitical fracture where they said blah, blah, blah. Your friends, number one, are going to go, what? You watched that shit? And you're going to go, yeah, it's why I know what you don't. It's not that you're stupid. It's just you don't watch what I watch. You don't witness what I witness. And that's okay, because I'm here to help. I'm here to help you guys understand what I know. And your friend's going to appreciate it. Your friend's going to be, thank you for watching all these crazy videos. And you're going to go, I saw it on an ex-truck driver's channel. And the story's going to get even weirder. Ex-truck and a who? Ex-truck driver. Now cryptocurrency entrepreneur. All right. Let's go smoke a cigarette, grab something to drink, grab like some coffee or something. We'll be right back. You'll go potty? No. You won't come outside? It's okay. All righty, folks, we are back. We are back. Let's bring up our lovely panel of globalist assholes. And let's continue. Right now, they are talking about Europe and NATO. Now, let me explain. Russia's kicking the shit out of Ukraine, right? Literally kicking the shit out of Ukraine. And this is destroying their system. The Russia, China, they're scared, or no, these people are scared to death of what's going on. And this video was released 7 days ago. The name of the panel topic is Keeping the Lights On Amid Geopolitical Fracture. Like I said earlier, geopolitical means New World Order. Fracture means they're fucked. Or, yes, like my good friend Cliff says, the mother weffers. Right? Now, let's continue. Remember, we're watching this so that as this transition happens, our friends have us, and we are informed properly, not just on our side, but on what the old system is doing, how they're trying to save themselves. Where they're trying to save themselves by printing more money, but yet trying to fight global inflation. It never works, folks. Never, ever, ever works. And now they're seeing it. They know they're in deep trouble. This is them trying to figure out, how do they stay relevant? How do they fix the New World Order?
You, as a Nordic background, you know about it. But I have to say that my party fully agreed with that. But even the left-wing alliance that has had in their program the anti-NATO policy changed their policies and voted in favor. So it was a very unified Finland. But maybe on the Ukraine issue and on the security situation, I have to say that the black swans, unfortunately, are now coming from Europe, and the risks are coming from Europe. Of course, we can think about this different kind of escalation of the conflict, Russian aggression against Ukraine. We, of course, would like to support Zelensky's 10-point peace plan, but peace, it needs two to tango. We know that. And then I think the issue, when we speak about the multilateralism and how the international organizations work in this time, of course, Helsinki was the place where the Helsinki Final Act 1975 was signed. It was some kind of end of the Cold War. And now Finland will be sharing the OSCE 2025 50 years celebration. And I don't know if it's a real celebration because we see a broken structure in European security. And what I would like actually to defend a little bit the UN, because I'm facing a lot of questions that should we close the whole shop with the UN at the moment, because UN cannot defend Ukraine and UN can do this and that. I have been saying that actually, according to the UN Charter, Article 51, a country which is attacked can ask help from the other countries until the problems are solved in the UN Security Council. And we are exactly there. Ukraine has been attacked. Ukraine asked for help from other countries. We are helping. We are waiting for the Security Council to solve issue. And of course, the bottleneck is the Security Council. And now instead of the Security Council, we have the General Assembly that has been taking a very high moral high stand on this issue. And that's important. We have an international agreement on that issue. But of course, at the same time, we should work through the UN on issues where we can. The food security is one, the grain trade channel that has been opened. I think it's a success story. I just 2 days ago discussed with Mr. Grossi from the IAEA, who was on his way to Ukraine to look at the nuclear safety issue, very important for Europe and globally, and even some exchange of prisoners that is ongoing. I think the Turks are negotiating successfully in Ankara on this issue. It shows that these channels are open and discussion channels are open. But of course, it's very important that we stay in solidarity with Ukraine, defend their independence, their borders. And I'm also quite proud citizen of European Union, I have to say, because in the beginning, everybody was very skeptical how European Union will react. Are we united and so forth? We have, through the European Peace Facility, been supporting militarily Ukraine systematically, and together with the US and UK, an excellent cooperation on support of the Ukraine. But of course, the big challenge remains, how do we get Russia out of Ukraine? How do we get peace that is permanent peace in the region? And what kind of security guarantees we can organize for Ukraine?
And Finland has 1,300 kilometers border with Russia. So what I follow in Finnish politics is also this notion that Ukraine is then really also about other neighbors' future with Russia. Is that your interpretation too?
Well, of course, we Finns, we are very security-oriented people. And when we look at the world news, we always ask first, what if this is happening on our borders? And only then, when we have solved that question, then we say how to organize the solidarity towards those who are in trouble. And I think it's from our history. And when first Belarus organized illegal migration over the border to Poland, the Finns asked, what if this is happening on our border? When Ukraine was attacked by Russia, we asked ourselves, what if this is happening to our border? And that led us to NATO debate, particularly actually these unconventional weapons issues, like the nuclear threat, the chemical weapons threat. People asked that, hey, we have a quite strong traditional military, traditional army, big reserves, but what if we are threatened with the unconventional weapons? And I think it's fair enough to ask, unfortunately today, also that kind of questions when we see the prognosis of the war. And I think that's where we are. We are all the time saying that we are bringing a peaceful border to NATO, 1,300 kilometer peaceful border. Our border authorities are still working. We have limited visas towards Russian citizens, but we allow those who are working to come over, those who are studying in Finland, and those who have relatives or those who need a hospital treatment. So there is traffic over the border.
I think the question we're all asking us is when and how can this war end? And as foreign minister, I used to also always come to Helsinki and discuss with you and your predecessor and the president about Russia, because there is a lot of knowledge about Russia in Finland. There's a long history. I guess that the mood is not the best in Kremlin these days, because I think the plan was probably to take Kiev in a week. That didn't happen. The war is not going as it was planned. Europe is united, but a war needs also to end. So what is now the current thinking in Kremlin? Do they see a way out of this? Do they think about that at all, or is the mentality now that we just double down on it? We just have to continue even attacking civilians and breaking basic humanitarian law?
Well, I maybe wouldn't sit here if I had the right information directly from Kremlin, but I would use it.
I said understanding of the mentality.
I would use it immediately, but let me say how we Finns look the situation. We have been living, we have a long neighborhood with Russia. We have even been part of the Russia during our autonomic time and so forth. But let's look 100 years first backwards. We had not king, but the Tsar, and then came Lenin, and then came Stalin, and of course, then came Khrushchev, and then Brezhnev, and then Gorbachev, and Yeltsin, and then Putin. And we see this zigzag 100 years in the history. And when we look towards the future, our best guess is that this will be the similar zigzag 100 years from now. But in all these circumstances, we have to live in the neighborhood with this country, and we have to understand somehow exactly the mentality. Currently, we see a rising patriotism. We see quite weak opposition in Russia. Many people have left Russia who think in a different way and so forth. Many young people, and Russia, there's a huge brain drain from Russia at the moment. And this is, of course, not good for the Russian future if we think in that way. But at the moment, we don't see any movement that is from the inside Russia stopping the war and so forth. So we can only think that militarily Russia should be stopped, and militarily it should be shown that there is a limit. You cannot go, there is a red limit, you cannot go over the border of a country without any consequences. And I think, by the way, when I'm referring to this UN Article 51, when people ask, has it been used before? I said, 1990 autumn, I was sitting in the Finnish parliament, a delegation from Kuwait came and say, Iraq has been occupying our country, can you help? And a coalition of voluntary countries were formed. So actually 1990, it was the same mechanism. And that gives us the responsibility to protect Ukraine as much as we can.
Yeah, and I think I'm, of course, trying to be a neutral moderator here, but I think there is, wasn't there a Budapest memorandum in '94? And there was no dispute about the borders. Originally, it was an acknowledgement of the borders, wasn't it?
Yes. All borders, of course, have been recognized, and already what happened 2014, of course, the stealing of the Crimea by Russia. Everybody said that we should have been reading these marks even more clearly. We can be critical to ourselves that we didn't maybe react strongly enough, but of course, major violation of the international rules has happened, and major violence against the rules of the human rights have happened, of course, in this bombing of the civilian locations and others. And I think it's very important, wherever the countries are coming from, that in the UN to agree on those principles. And there are some principles, and we have to respect those. And
you're sending weapons to Ukraine too, Finland?
We are sending weapons, and we have been sending 11 hard packages. The latest one was worth of 55 million euros, and we are discussing now about the Leopard 2 tanks. We have some of them in Finland, bought very cheaply from Netherlands, by the way, in the time of the peace. But this is an issue, this Leopard 2 tanks, that is pending on Germany and Poland. But basically, these are German-made tanks, so we need a permission from Germany, but also we need a bigger slot of same models to be sent, otherwise it's quite useless.
So coming back to you, Senator Kunz, because I heard today that, of course, the support from the US there has been critical for Ukraine. You had also President Zelensky addressing both the chambers of the Congress. But there is also this discussion going on, though, how long the US will support the war. And one of the things that is said also from Kremlin is that, we don't know how long this will continue, because there is also not full alignment on this thing in the US. Do you think with the Republican majority now in the House and the Democratic majority in the Senate, do you think there will be changes in the U.S. policy here, or is there just a few single voices?
I think there are just a few single voices. I think there are folks in the left and the right in our political spectrum who are questioning the cost, but I think this is something where the overwhelming majority of the members of Congress and of our people, support a continued robust partnership with all of our allies in Europe and around the world, frankly, to see this as what it is, a brutal war of aggression, an attempt to rewrite the boundaries of Europe, an imperial war. And frankly, after tens of thousands of Ukrainians have died fighting, we cannot step back at this point. Putin had calculated that he could divide the West during the winter by having huge costs, cutting off energy and making Europe bear some of the costs. That has not happened. He calculated that by striking a civilian infrastructure and leaving millions of Ukrainians in the cold and the dark, he could break their will. That has not happened. Now Putin has to assess where the costs are greater, where the risks are greater. And I think Western unity and unity in pushing back against this aggression is critical. It will determine a lot of the shape of the next few decades. He has already made a huge strategic mistake. Finland and Sweden will join NATO, doubling the border with Russia and bringing two sophisticated advanced economies into NATO. I think what we now need to see is a path towards a successful conclusion and the liberation of Ukraine.
Thank you. Of course, if it's any of the GCC foreign ministers that want to comment here, please feel free to comment on this topic. If not, I will go to Kristalina.
Yeah, I mean, just to say, and I'll just say that, you know, we've heard, and you emphasize this, that this conflict has impacts well beyond just Ukraine. And at some point, we need to find a pathway to ending the conflict. So that's, I think, if you listen to the developing world, that's the message you will hear mostly, is, you know, that this is significant. And obviously, this is a complex question, but we will have to talk about how we find a pathway to ending the conflict. And Baka kind of mentioned that there are already some efforts on the margins, let's say, you know, prisoner transfers, you know, we were involved in some of those, Turkey is doing some of those. There's work on nuclear safety, which might be a doorway. So they need, you know, we need to also look towards a path to ending this conflict, because without that, the uncertainty that Kristalina referred to is going to continue.
Thank you. Sheikh Mohammed?
Well, I think, look, Borge, what just Pekka mentioned about, you know, referring to the Charter of United Nations, and no one from us, no one, at least, you know, Qatar, GCC, all of the countries, we voted, for example, for the resolution. No one would like to see an aggression toward another country or threatening of using of power. And we want to see everyone standing up and abiding by the UN Charter. But what's really, you know, struck us in the region when we are looking at the world, you know, mobilizing only for specific cases and specific causes. And we've been in the Middle East, like, suffering for decades from all violations for UN Charter, including from the Palestinian-Israeli issue to the Syrian issue, and just, you know, a lot of other things going on. We would like to see the same world stand for these kinds of causes, because unfortunately we still see them unaddressed and just continuing. There is a very big concern now among the region with what's happening in Palestine, with all these provocative policies. We would like to see a real stand from our allies and partners also to stop the Israeli government from taking such an actions. And this is applied also to the suffering of the Syrian people and others. We would really want to see an end for this war in Ukraine. We would like to see everyone abiding with the Charter of United Nations. We want to see an end of the suffering of the Ukrainian people as soon as possible, as well as the other people in the world.
Thank you. It says time out, but Kristalina, I think we can at least take the privilege of prerogative of taking 2 minutes. I think you're the only one Russian speaking on this panel too, and we should not forget that Kristalina grew up in Bulgaria. You also was the World Bank's representative. I remember I met you in Moscow. So how do you look at this? Is there an end to it? And I think the economic impact, and also on food prices and etc., is quite terrible. So if you can do that in 2-3 minutes.
Well, it is tragic to see Russia taking such a coarse to destabilize Ukraine, but also destabilize itself. And if we look at 22, the biggest, single biggest factor affecting the world economy was this senseless war. What I know about Russia is that one of the pitfalls of the last decades was the fact that there wasn't more concerted effort to integrate the Russian society, the Russian people, within the world community. When I was in the European Commission, I used to very often say, Becca, we have to have more people-to-people exchanges with Russia. So we have the Russian people feeling that they're part of a family of nations, rather than being taught that they're somehow different. I was country director for Russia based in Moscow in the best days when Russia was.
Let me translate that, what she just said. We couldn't brainwash the Russian people. We weren't allowed to brainwash the Russian people. Russia didn't allow us to take over their education system. Russia kicked out the central bankers. Russia wouldn't allow us to re-educate their youth. That's what she's saying.
Russia is that one of the pitfalls of the last decades was the fact that there wasn't more concerted effort to integrate the Russian society, the Russian people, within the world community. When I was in the European Commission, I used to very often say, Becca, we have to have more people-to-people exchanges with Russia. So we have the Russian people feeling that they're part of a family of nations, rather than being taught that they're somehow different. I was country director for Russia based in Moscow in the best days when Russia was reforming and there was G8. Remember these days? And at that time, when you ask the Russian people who they are, how they define themselves, the majority would say Europeans, even the Russians that live in the Asian part of Russia. When you ask the Russian people today, they say we are different. We are a different civilization. We are different from the rest of the world. So if I draw one lesson, is to remember that yes, policies are defined in the high corridors of power. But when a population of a country subscribes to policies that are detrimental to their own interests, there is something for the world to reflect on and perhaps think about ways in which we can do more people-to-people exchange. I am concerned that in this horrible thing Russia has done, there is a bit of kind of vilifying all Russians. We throw them all in that pot. And we have to be careful about it. There are so many wonderful, smart Russian people that don't agree with these policies. Some of them are now in Poland and in Finland, and try to think not in this, to take this individual case of Russia and say a world that is more integrated is a world where we are connected on the basis of our humanity, and we recognize how much we depend on each other, that we actually all of us, we are not that different. We are all part of humanity. And to finish on this note on Russia, those who speak, are there Russian speakers in the audience? Anybody?
I think there's.
It's like me. Okay.
No, there is a couple.
There's some.
Yeah.
There is a very famous Russian song, and when the war started, it spiked into my mind. That is about Russia not wanting the Second World War. And the song is «Хотят ли русские войны?» Do the Russians want a war? And the whole notion of the song is no, they don't. What happened? Why did it happen? And how we can put an end to it. I want to leave us with this notion that even the 100 Years' War ended where? At the negotiating table. The sooner we define a space, as everybody here said, for this horrible war to end, the better for everyone. And of course, great news for the world economy.
Well, thank you. First, I'm biased as the moderator, but I thought we had a very interesting.
Hey everyone, Raoul's Venture Crypto, it's really my flagship show. It's where I interview the best guests in the world, people you
All right, now, this next video I've been using all week on the show. I want people to understand, and I'm going to keep pushing. I've had people reach out and go, Ben, we know you love cryptos. We know that you're launching this office. We know you have an office in El Salvador. We know you're looking at launching an office over in, Dubai. We know you plan on opening up, more clubs all over America. Why? Why are you doing this? It's the equivalent of the Industrial Revolution, except on a global, decentralized way. We have to wrap our heads around that we're entering into a new world. And I had a choice this evening. Either I play this interview with Raoul Pal, right? Or I play and we talk about the future economy. They're the same video, except laid out in a different way. I chose Raoul's because what he's talking about and what the other video wasn't talking about was the individualism of the economy. Raul and he gets it. And he even gives examples of what's going to come. And he describes what I'm creating and why I'm doing it is this. Either we create the new economy or they do. One of us is going to do it. Either the new economy frees us with blockchain, or it seals our fate as slaves. Blockchain is a double-sided blade. You use it one way, it frees you. You use it another way, and it enslaves you. One of those ways is going to win. And I chose to put myself, my company, my family into making sure that we lead the adoption. We lead the push. We lead the reaching out to the public, just like the gal said in the last video. Her one regret with Russia is that they tried just taking over the government. They forgot about the people. That they didn't integrate the people of Russia. They didn't indoctrinate the people of Russia. That was her one regret. Well, my friends, in this new economy, either we get the people on our side and we do it decentralized at the individual level, or they decentralize it at the nation level. See, they want decentralized world, but they want it at the nation level. They don't want it at the individual level. They want it at the nation level. That's why I catch hell for Ripple. I don't hate XRP, the token. I hate Ripple, the company, because they're okay with the decentralization at the national level. They don't want decentralization at the individual level. That's the difference. I want every individual to have the power. They want every government to have the power of the currency. And that's why we're opening in Florida. That's why we're going to open in Texas. That's why we have an office in El Salvador. Because El Salvador is teaching its people that cryptocurrencies and the Bitcoin are for the people. It's why they made it legal tender. Nikki says, I hope it's possible. Well, Nikki, I don't rely on hope. I rely on myself. That's why I'm doing it. I don't hope someone else makes it possible. I make sure it gets done because I do it. Hope is a lazy man's word. Hope is not action. We need action. Exactly. Hope is not a strategy. So, I digress. Now, let's watch this and listen carefully, folks. This is what is coming. This is what is here. This is what we are creating together. And this is why, please, folks, listen to me. This is why I want every single one of you at the Founders Group event in St. Louis. Drive to St. Louis for the weekend. Hang out with the rest of us and understand how you get involved. This is a mission. This is a mission to secure our freedom. The Founders Group Worldwide event in St. Louis is a meeting of the mission, the freedom mission. We have to get together to work together. Let's do this, folks. We have to. Either we do it or they do it. I digress. Now let's listen.
You never get on another show. I think it's the best show. Hi, everyone. I wanted to try and give you my thoughts in depth about NFTs. You see, NFTs are something that really taken my attention in the last year as I've started to understand the power of what they are and what they can do. You know, we've got the protocol layer, which is the layer ones, the Bitcoin, the Ethereums, the Solanas, the Polygons, and all of these others. And they're amazing. and they facilitate the technology for the transfer of value for the internet at large and for the new digital age. And it's an incredibly important technology, not only for money, but of all digital value and digital scarcity. You see, in a digital world, you can produce infinite amounts of something, infinite amounts of JPEGs, infinite amounts of information. So how do you create scarcity in a digital world? Well, that's what blockchains do. They create the ability to have scarcity in a digital world and therefore have value. So humans value things based on scarcity. And so you need that. If not, nothing in a digital world has any value at all. Okay, so that's what blockchains did. But the big breakthrough was Vitalik's breakthrough with Ethereum, which was the smart contract. And the smart contract is what created NFTs. So let me talk you through a bit of this. Now, what is a smart contract? What is an NFT? It's in fact a smart contract stored on a blockchain. We all know that, but if you actually thought what it means, well, there's three component parts to all of this. Firstly, the contract. You see, in human society, every single agreement in the broadest sense is a contract, be it written, implied, or verbal, from religious vows to airline tickets, from meeting a friend for a rum or using Twitter. Contracts are literally the base layer of society that build on trust. You see, human societies can't function without these contractual terms about how we interact and what we do. They are contracts. And as I said, some of these are verbal and some of them are explicit, like your insurance contract or a contract to buy a share. Those are all contracts. The other point of this is stored on a blockchain, that element. You see, all contracts need to have some record. Some of them may be handshakes. That's you and I agreeing to something. Or it may be a nod, approval, or in the City of London, it used to be my word is my bond, which is if I agree to something, it is sacrosanct that we have done that deal. But you can also include rooms of lawyers, databases, all other ways of storing a contract, or you can do it on a blockchain. Now, what a blockchain does is it allows these contracts to be settled, disputed or agreed, and allows it to be recorded. You see, the blockchain allows for the verification by a distributed ledger of any contract. So therefore, you get around the Byzantine generals problem of not knowing who agreed what with whom. This way, everybody agrees what's in the contract. Okay, so that has abilities to scale, and we'll come on to that in a bit. But it's a really, really important thing that now all contracts can be written in code and agreed that this contract exists and for everybody to see that it exists and the terms of that contract. Now, what's interesting about the smart contract element of an NFT is the fact that it kind of allows for the settlement mechanism to be automated in code and resolves without the need for a third party. So you don't need the courts, the lawyers, the notaries, the accountants, or anybody. So that's the really interesting element here. You have a contract and it can settle automatically and it's verifiable by everybody. Okay, it sounds kind of a bit boring because it doesn't really mean a lot. It's also decentralized. And this is one of the key elements. Now, most of you understand the elements of decentralization is having this immutable database with all of this information stored, which is verified by millions or hundreds of millions of people. That's the power of blockchain. So nobody can change the terms or conditions. And God knows how many times we've all had to fight over something where somebody agreed something, and then when you come to get paid or whatever the outcome, it doesn't happen. So that's the element of smart contracts. Now, right now, people think of NFTs as art or some sort of community thing, and both are amazing uses. Now, for example, in the background, I have my NFTs displayed. And NFTs are super interesting because they fulfill so many different elements of what makes Web3 Web3. Firstly, we saw, I think it was in my conversations with RAC, the award-winning music artist, he kind of taught me the power of community and how NFTs could be used for music. But then within Real Vision, we started talking to artists like Mad Dog Jones and Micah Johnson. And they were doing two different things. Mad Dog Jones was creating digital art and making it scarce. So places like DeviantArt have a community of 70 million people plus creating digital art and enjoying it, but there was no way of selling it because you couldn't create scarcity. But with a blockchain, you can make it a one of one. It's kind of like a limited edition print or a unique painting where you own it. Now, yes, you can have the image of it. You can have the image of the Mona Lisa. You don't own the Mona Lisa. In fact, more people have the image of it, the more valuable the actual original is, which is something a lot of people don't get their heads around. So artists are always innovators, and they took to the space. They started realizing that digital art was something that was a new form of art and that they could experiment with it. And along came a revolution in art. And it started with people like Beeple, incredibly putting together 5,000 pieces of digital work over a number of years, and then that being sold as one NFT in itself. And they were different NFTs, and that sold for 69 million. That took the art world by surprise, and Sotheby's and Christie's have both been involved in this as they've realized that this is a new form of art. Art has always broken boundaries, whether it was the Impressionist painters, the postmodernists, the expressionists, everybody has reinvented what art means. Photography reinvented what art means. How can a photograph be scarce? Well, it is if you create the limited edition print of it. And, you know, we've had on Real Vision unbelievable artists as well. Alpha Centauri Kid, incredible. You know, Xcopy is one of my favorites. I think his glitch art is just exquisite and so kind of fresh and modern. It's kind of like the Banksy of the digital world. They all have generally some meaning too. I mean, I collect Beeple as well, and Beeple's work is, well, not at 69 million, but there's cheaper works to be had. His work is really amazing because it's about that day's news and something that is relevant culturally. And then it's immutably put on the blockchain in his shock manner. And now his art is shocking and incredible. That's my Xcopy now, which is one of the least rare, but I still love it. So we've got these artists experimenting and doing amazing stuff. And some of this stuff is immensely valuable. You know, people like Fuck Render, Alpha Centauri Kid, ACK, Beeple, some of their art trades for the millions and well-deserved. There's others who have kind of fallen into it, like a good friend of mine, OSF, Ovi. Ovi created one-of-one art, sort of in the style of Xcopy, and it really took off as well, and then created the Rec Guy community. And that brings me into the other side of what happened. What happened in NFTs was it started with CryptoKitties, and we've interviewed the founders of CryptoKitties in the past on Real Vision, and Bill Ty, who was an investor in it, and how important CryptoKitties were in this movement, because it started to create digital assets for a game that could be transferred or owned. Okay, that doesn't happen. Anything you own in Minecraft or whatever, you don't actually own in the outside world. It's only within that game. So it's a closed shop. But blockchain changes that. CryptoPunks was a project that was pretty worthless that was done several years ago. And eventually in 2020, people started thinking, well, these were the OGs in the space, 10,000 of these pixelated punks, and I am one of those too. And people started thinking, well, if I want to show that I've been around this space and understand the space, I want to own one. And that's where status comes in. Same as we all do. You know, we buy artwork, not only for our own appreciation, but for status. We buy watches, nice watches, because we like the watches and because they socially signal something about us. The clothes that we wear, what we do, our houses, our cars, everything. Humans are ridiculous and we love to socially signal stuff. Even when we are wealthy and we drive an old Volvo, like the old chairman of IKEA, beaten up 20-year-old car, he's signaling something himself. Everybody signals. It's a human trait that is very common. So that works digitally as well as it does physically. We all wear designer labels often because they signal something, and we do the same in the internet. And the PFP became the important part of that movement. So CryptoPunks became the PFP that people would show that A, they could afford to spend the money on it, but also that they understood the space and where it was going. Then on the scene came Bored Ape Yacht Club. And this is a whole new thing because what they did, Yuga Labs, was they realized that you could do a lot more with it. That this could be the genesis to a whole media thing or a gaming thing, something really, really different. And so the Bored Ape Yacht Club took off, and its value is now often higher than CryptoPunks. Why is that? Well, CryptoPunks are a little bit like Bitcoin. There's less applications built on them. In fact, there's none. There's just the punk itself. And that's the status symbol and the signaling that comes with it, a part of history. But Bored Ape Yacht Club also created history, but it did something different. It said, you kind of are going to get future rights to other things that we do as we grow out this project. What that means, we don't know yet. And that created the thing of the roadmap, where you got drop benefits by being part of the community. So whether it was the Mutant Apes, or whether it's the Bored Ape Kennel Club, or the token, the ape token, or it's the other side deeds to their metaverse experience, or the sewer pass, all of these things actually trade for huge value. And actually, the accumulation of value for the original Bored Ape Yacht Club holders, had you held on to it, is one of the largest accumulations in corporate history. And it is a corporate, and it's your kind of stake in their network. And this is the network effects and the network state ideas that I want to talk to you about as well. I want to also talk about ETH as an economy, this network state idea I've been thinking about in my head. And ETH to me is the closest approximation for the network economy. You see, when you look at the Ethereum economy itself, you have the economic activity, which is the on-chain activity of Ethereum itself. It generates fees, it does a whole bunch of other stuff. But then as part of that, it breaks down to subcomponents. So there is a public sector, central bank style bond market, which is the yield curve, which is coming from ETH staking yields. And as ETH moves towards kind of flexible staking yields with this Shanghai merge, it means we should have a yield curve out to 1 year for sure, and maybe longer. So that looks very much like a traditional economy where you've got a cost of capital over a shorter period of time. You've got yield that generates interest income that gets reinvested in the economy. So that's very interesting. Then we've also got a private sector lending market, which is DeFi. So much like the traditional economy, like the US economy, it has DeFi and other kind of lending areas make up the banking sector. So that's kind of interesting, and that's still pretty nascent. So my guess is as a percentage of GDP, and I'm going to do some work on ETH GDP and how to think of it as an economy. I'm just thinking through it. But as a percentage of GDP, the financial sector is very small still in the Ethereum economy and should grow over time, because in every single market, the financial economy is usually grows faster than the actual economy itself, particularly in this phase, i.e. the early phase of an economy. It also has, I think, an equity layer. And the equity layer I'm thinking of is like the layer 2. So these are like companies. So you could think of Polygon as like Google. So it works within, like Google does within the US economy or the global economy, generates revenues that are different to the underlying economy, but add to it. And that's what these layer 2s do. So I think they're like the equity layer, the companies that sit on top. And I understand they're protocols and not companies, etc. But I think that's how I'm thinking about it. And same with the applications, other applications layers as well, that these are like companies being built on top of the network, which is what they are, which creates network value, but it also is what creates economic value. So if you think of the United States, it has all of the companies that make up part of its economy that creates the GDP, the government sector being one part of it, but the private sector being the huge part, and that's the driver of GDP growth. And so I think that the ETH economy is remarkably similar. But that got me thinking about, how do NFTs fit in? And I'm going to go back and tell you a story because I think it's really interesting, something you really need to understand about NFTs. So back in 2012-13, I was living in Spain and I'd gone through the European crisis after the financial crisis. And the euro was still pretty highly valued, but had topped out. It was kind of the 140-ish, something around that level. And I had a structural view that the dollar was going to be stronger and the euro weaker because of the debt issues in the Eurozone. And so I took a very brave, ridiculous move, much like I did in crypto several years later, is I switched 100% of all of my liquid net worth into dollars. And I was living in Spain. I was earning in euros. So then I actually changed the billing for Global Macro Investor into dollars. So I changed my base currency. I then thought, okay, what do I do with these dollars? So I bought some bonds and I then bought some assets. So I'd done the same with Ethereum, I realized. So I wanted to invest in the Ethereum economy. So I bought Ethereum. I bought some bonds. I get some staking yields. As you know, I'm not really big into the DeFi space overall, but staking yields, I don't mind some of that. And then I started allocating my ETH to NFTs. In the US side of the equation, when I did that trade originally, what I did was bought property. So I bought property in the Cayman Islands. I built that house in Little Cayman, and that was a way of parking dollars in a productive asset. And stopping me trading them, because you know what it's like, you get spooked out by markets. And that worked out pretty well. You know, my guess is the value of the property, I don't know what it's gone up, call it 50%. And the dollar went up about 30% against the euro. So overall, you kind of get the leverage of the trade without leverage. Now, NFTs are the same. So I think the current type of NFTs, which is kind of scarce assets like art and some of the community stuff like punks and apes and stuff. These act like the art market traditionally, where people invest because it's all based in dollars. So they park dollars into art. It's a way of keeping hold of dollars and keeping out of bank accounts, that kind of stuff. In this situation, NFTs, it's a way of owning property in the ETH economy. So I've got property or art, whatever you want to think about it, but a property in that sense. And that property is priced in ETH. Now, this is the remarkable thing about Ethereum, is actually the internet, the Web3 internet, uses ETH as its base currency. Not Bitcoin, it's ETH. ETH is what they price mainly NFTs in. Obviously, there's some in Solana, there's some in Tezos and everything else, but ETH is the main bulk of it. So these things are priced in ETH, so they can move around, but the main driver of it is the actual value of ETH itself. Because if something's worth 1 ETH and ETH's at $1,500, and they're still at 1 ETH, and ETH's at $3,000, you've doubled your money. And you haven't got rid of your ETH bet. Okay, this is really interesting. So I started allocating, I don't know, maybe 10% of my ETH or so into premium NFTs. And some of those are communities, some of those are art projects. Because I saw that stuff like punks, when you look at the price of crypto punks and Bored Apes, is they've remained incredibly stable in ETH terms. Yes, they had a blow off top, and then they came back, and they've traded at about 65 ETH forever. And that's interesting to me, because they didn't fall much further. They had a sharp spike in June in the big crypto collapse, but other than that, they just rallied back and stayed at 65 ETH. So whatever ETH does, they're just mirroring it. Okay, so I can take my ETH and put it into a JPEG, an NFT. But why? Well, because much like property, high-end property, and think of a punk as a high-end property in London or New York or Hong Kong, wherever it is when the economy starts booming and people have more money, they tend to buy expensive high-end property, and it tends to outperform the rest of the market. And I think the same thing will happen in the ETH economy. So as the ETH economy recovers, and it will do over time, and the ETH price goes up and economic activity in the Ethereum economy goes up, some of that excess returns that people make get recycled into assets. And the ETH assets are things like CryptoPunks or Fidenzas or Beeple or whatever it may be, Squiggles, or some of this great artwork, or some of these communities that have prestige and social status, social currency. I think that becomes really interesting, because we've seen that punks can go maybe up to 150 for the floor price. So at 65, in a good ETH bull market, you could double or triple your money in ETH terms, and ETH could go up, let's say 5x from here. So that's a huge kicker. And the great thing is you're not actually getting rid of your ETH, because it's still priced in ETH. So I think of it as like a call option. You know, what's the downside in my punk? I don't know, maybe 55 ETH. And what's the upside? 150, 200 ETH. So, okay, that's a super interesting bet from here because the floor price is about 65 ETH. So you've got about, I don't know, 10, 15 ETH downside and 100 ETH upside. I love bets like that. And particularly because I keep my ETH. Anyway, I want you to think about this Ethereum economy and the network state of Ethereum and how NFTs are the assets within that economy and how you might want to do that. Now, obviously, as NFTs evolve, there'll be different use cases and they won't all act like assets. Now, it's also not saying that NFTs don't all go to zero. So many of them will because they're projects that lose interest, but some of them don't and some of them will maintain value over time. We're seeing that very much so in various parts of the market. And I'm more interested in those parts of the market where I can afford it because some of this stuff's crazy expensive. Yeah, I'm more interested in that. And then some of the communities, because I'm just interested in those communities, but I think of them less of an investment. And my bet in those is small. You know, if you buy something that, you know, at 1 ETH and it goes up to 2 ETH, great, but it's not going to change my life. But, you know, if my whole portfolio of NFTs over time outperforms ETH, okay, that becomes very interesting because my ETH bet's very big.
So what is this network state idea? Well, I interviewed Balaji at depth in this and something I've been talking about for a long time. You see, in a digital world, well, in a physical world, we have proximity of neighborhoods and people around us. But as the world becomes more digital, our communities have changed from the physical community to more so our digital community. And that's where we share.
All right. Although the earlier part of the video was important, this is the part that I really want you to understand is the transition from the physical to the digital and the amazing upside of the digital. That those of us who are in this transformation early, we have, and this is not exaggerating, folks, the next 20 years, people are going to make millions and millions and millions of dollars, or actually, you know, Bitcoin. They're going to become wealthy just educating. And, hey, Bob, wake up, brother. You sorry ass. Educating and transitioning applicable companies into the new way, the new system. That's what the Founders Group is doing with coffee, with beer, with a lot of our projects, with friggin' Firefly, with all these projects. And what makes it amazing, what makes it great, is that the individuals can share one link of a product, and that one share, that one, hey, try this coffee, that one share can make residual income for that person who shares it. Because what if you share it with yes, Tall Mary D, me, yes. You, Tall Mary, you can share something and one of your friends or one of your friends' friends in your downline says, "Oh, I love this coffee. I'm going to set it on auto buy every month." And every month they buy coffee. And every month you get a percentage of what they buy. Now, you just keep living your life and you share your links and you purchase more products and you like it, so you share it and you share it and you share it. Before you know it, thanks to what he's going to talk about on this video, thanks to years of just living your life, sharing products and apps and all that, you could literally sit back and making a livable income within a few years if you have monthly residual income. That's what I'm creating in Florida. That's what the Founders Group is. That's what FGTV is going to be. That's what the Founders Group website is going to be. The Founders Group will be an app. The Bitcoin in Crypto Club will be an app. And you'll be able to share both of them with, your friends and say, hey, if you want to watch this show, watch this. And all of my creator friends. Or here's a great example, all right? Say that Carrie and her sister do a video on how you make cookies. And they put it up on the Founders Group. And they put a link on their video and go, hey, share this video. And we will give whoever has a link to this video 10% off of cookies or something. And they record the video, they load it up to FGTV, and under the entertainment tab, and the cooking tab, there's their video. And what if it goes viral? Then all of a sudden, they're selling more cookies than they know what to do with. This is what I'm talking about. You guys are going to be able to monetize anything you want through the Founders Group and through the Bitcoin Ben Crypto Bar, our crypto club. And it's going to be global, folks, and we're going to be growing. It's here. I digress. Here, let's bring on my boy. Ow! He looks like he's singing, doesn't he? Ow! I feel good. Raul said he would.
Share our lives with like-minded people on the internet. And at first it seemed weird, and now it's normal, particularly after the pandemic or during the pandemic, when we all became closer to the people around us digitally. And we start forming, and have been forming for several years, these splintered digital societies or network states. Now, you can have the Chihuahua Lovers Club, and you can be in every country in the world, but you're not a network state. You have shared interests. So it's a shared interest group, but it's not really a society. Society becomes when you get more contractual terms. So that may be how you behave, what you do. And generally there's a set of leaders, kind of a mission. But once you introduce a system of value or currency, then you've got a state. And that's what the NFTs have enabled. I thought social tokens would be faster, but it's actually NFTs. Social tokens will come. And we've seen that with the Bored Ape Yacht Club's ape token. But NFTs have acted like that. So if you think about the Yuga community, you can have a stake in it, and you can have a large stake by having a Bored Ape. And then you get dropped all of the benefits. And you can network and socially signal and all of those other things. Or you can have smaller component parts, which are cheaper and easier to access, but you get less benefits. So you've now corralled those original 10,000 people who got the Bored Apes around an idea that we're going to build something bigger. They come with you on the journey. If you don't want to participate in that journey, you can sell your ape and sell it to somebody else who does want to participate in that journey, and so on and so forth. You bring new people in, you have the ape token, and now everybody has a share in the success of this network. So you're incentivized to make the network more successful. So this whole idea of these mini network states, the communities in NFTs, have become prevalent everywhere now. Even artists have their own communities, which really didn't happen before. So if you're a collector of Damien Hirst, you didn't really have anything where you had a connection to Damien or you had a connection to other.
Yes, I do realize that. Thank you. I take that as a compliment. I appreciate that. Yes, thank you.
Collectors. But actually, Damien broke the mold here. And he did something that none of the physical artists have really done. He's like, I'm going to give this a go. Typical Damien Hirst. He wanted to experiment. So what he did was he created a 10,000 physical art pieces, some dot paintings, called the currency. He then issued NFTs of all of them, which you could buy, and I own one, proudly so, because I love Damien Hirst. He's very culturally relevant to me. And he's one of the highest, most expensive living artists in history, and extraordinarily prolific and groundbreaking. So anyway, so I get one of Damien's NFTs. Then you get the choice. Do you want to burn the NFT or burn the piece of art? So now here's the Damien trying to figure out, okay, what's more valuable in this world, physical art or digital art? Or are they thought of as the same thing? Amazing experiment from one of the world's greatest living artists. And what happens was quite surprising, is 50% of people kept one or the other. I kept the NFT, obviously, but other people burnt the NFT and put up the Damien Hirst on their wall. And they both still trade for about the same amount of money. So humans are pricing NFTs like they would art, which is why Beeple traded for 69 million, other art trades for millions, and other art trades for very little. It's very similar. So that was interesting. But Damien now has a community and a Discord channel, and he can do other things with that community that he couldn't do before. So it opened up a whole new world to him. But for others, it created the ability to get around a similar idea. Now, one of my favorites has been, two of them are actually similar-ish, which are MFers and Rex Guy, of which I own both of those two. Why those two? Well, MFers I bought first. And MFers was really interesting because that is basically a representation of all of us in Web3, stuck at our computers, dressed in whatever, working all day and all night and absolutely loving it. We're all motherfuckers, and that's what the MFers is all about. It's a representation of us. We're looking at ourselves in the mirror with a smile on our faces, laughing at how ridiculous and how hard we're all working and how we're addicted to our computers. That really resonated with many people, and I think everyone saw themselves in it. Rec Guy came exactly at the right moment from OSF, good friend of mine. He, from his artwork from Red Light District and other pieces, developed this PFP of the Rect Guy. And the Rect Guy was that Web3 MFer, essentially, hoping that prices would recover and getting wrecked. And part of the space is understanding the volatility and understanding that sometimes you're going to get wrecked. Sometimes somebody's going to pull the rug on you because it's so nascent there's scams around. Other times the NFT you think was valuable is worth nothing. And other times they're worth a fortune. Or the crypto market itself gets trapped in the macro liquidity cycle and everything's down 80%. That's being wrecked. And Rec Guy represents that. And again, it's the humor, the gallows humor of we get what this space is about. It's different. We're different people. And we kind of deal with it. And I love that. It's culturally relevant. And what's happened is, they've held events around the world. They've got no roadmap. He's not trying to create Yuga. He's just saying, listen, we're all in this together. Let's have some fun with it. And I love it. And that really resonated with me. So there's a lot of these different types of communities, and they're really, really interesting. We've seen crypto dick butts as well, which is A, one of the funniest of all, and B, it's the irreverency as well, the fun, right? There's so little fun in the world right now, and Web3 is fun. It's based on fun and irreverency and laughing at ourselves, celebrating when everything goes wrong, celebrating when it goes right. We're all in this together. We're all going to make it. And the way that people say GM to each other is not ridiculous. It's a reflection of the bitter wars of Bitcoiners versus Ethereum people and how seriously people took the space. But this injected something different in. It injected a sense of community. And the community is not, oh, I'm a Bored Ape and you're a punk. It's like we're all welcome together. We're all going to make it. And that idea that we can bring communities together again really has been what's needed. Because we look at the political battles online and the kind of battles of belief systems, and it's a tough old world on the internet. And Web3 just goes, fuck all of that. We're all humans. We're all ridiculously flawed. We're all trying to do groundbreaking stuff, have some fun. Some of us succeed, some of us will fail. And I think that's amazing. We've also seen some incredible uses of NFTs in the music space. I think this is still very nascent. RSC pioneered it. People like Jack Spallone, and a bunch of others, Cooper, a whole bunch of people have pioneered this. Is not yet taken off, but I think it's coming. And I think it's going to be really, really important because what is music? Right now, it's a digital file and it's endless in supply. So why would you not make it an NFT and make it limited in supply? Maybe the artwork for records that we used to love. I used to get an album or a CD and it was the artwork I loved. Maybe those can become NFTs so they have scarcity and you want to collect them again, as opposed to just streaming it from your Spotify list. list, because artists got screwed like everybody's got screwed in this whole system. And this is a way of both artists and music artists to get their IP back, their value back within their community, because they are valuable. And so if you can have if Rihanna produced a limited supply album for just 1,000 fans, what would they pay for it? A lot. And what benefits could you come with it? Well, because it's a smart contract, you can have first rights to tickets. You can have all sorts of things. And that leads me into what Ticketmaster have been doing, and I will get them on Real Vision at some point, is they've been dropping NFTs to everybody who turns up to sporting events and music events, because their wallet is NFT, is Web3 enabled. Now, I'm not sure there's a full roadmap for that yet, but the idea is get these things in as many hands as possible, which is Punk 6529's mission. I've had 5 or 6 hours of conversation with Punk 6529, and he's become a good friend of mine, and somebody I think is really the trusted guardian of the space in terms of thinking and what he's trying to do. He's thinking, well, listen, everything has been centralized, and here's a chance when we go into the metaverse and this digital rendition of the world that we live in, that we can reinvent this relationship that we have with our own communities, assets, IP, and culture, the memes. See, memes run societies. Memes run all societies. Religion is a meme. Everything is a narrative that humans invent to create societal contracts and societal constructs. So his idea is, well, let's seize the means of production. What he means by that is let's get as many people into this space as possible where we physically own digital assets. And that means that we can coalesce and create platforms that are better aligned with our own needs as opposed to the needs of a giant corporation. So if you think about Facebook, Google, and others, they captured the lion's share of all of the revenue of a.
This is where he starts really digging in on what we're doing here.
Space where we got used by advertising. And it's only going to get worse as we get into a more digital world, as we start heading into the metaverse, where we start to have a more visual representation of the digital lives we live in, as opposed to streaming text on Twitter or whatever it may be. So there's a huge change coming. And this is an important battle to face, is our rights as humans in this world. And I think it also leads us into identification. I've talked a lot about this. I think it's incredibly important that we have digital identification and that we can keep it private, but we're provable who we are, and that we have the credentials we say we have. And I think that is going to be increasingly important in a world driven by AI, where you can make any image instantaneously in huge quantities for any different type of person. And so we don't know what's real and what's fake. We could have Joe Biden saying, I'm going to nuke Russia tomorrow, in a CNN video, and you can do that very soon just by text to video, and it'll create the video. Okay, that's a huge problem coming up to the US election. I mean, imagine how other sovereign states could use this. And we don't know what is real and what's not. And we don't know who we're dealing with online. Are we dealing with AI? Are we dealing with bots? Are we dealing with real people? And digital verification of our identity, I think, is going to become increasingly important. Now, governments will get involved in it, and there's nothing we can do about that. And you will have your government ID, much like you have your passport. And guess what? Governments know everything about what's in your bank account, and Google knows everything about you. So you actually have no privacy, even though you think you do. But we can get our privacy back, and we can use it to log in around the web and have different manifestations of ourselves. I might want to be somebody different on Reddit than I am on Twitter, than I am on Real Vision, for example. And the ways of doing that to prove that I'm actually a real person, or I'm the same person, without saying who I am. Or maybe I don't want to prove I'm the same person, but I give a certain layer of the information away. So anyway, that's digital ID, which is a massive, massive part of all of this. The other thing that we're seeing is business models around capital and involvement. So I think people like Ben Mesrich and Dan Sickles, both filmmakers, have done really interesting things around what you can do with movies and books and other stuff like that is you can essentially crowdfund it by getting people to buy NFTs that involve in it that may get some stream of payments or participation in the future success of that project. It's kind of like Yuga Labs. But if I'm seeing award-winning filmmakers and authors doing it, okay, that's really interesting. Ben Mesrich's bigger idea is to create a platform for authors, much like Amazon's done with the ability to self-publish. But imagine if you can get paid better, you keep your ownership rights, Amazon doesn't take a larger share, and you can get a community behind it, etc. Okay, that becomes really interesting. The 1,000 True Fans approach is much easier to do once you have Web3 enabled access. So I think that's disrupting the media industry. I think we'll see NFTs become very large in the sports industry in due course. Digital collectibles have always been a large part of that industry, and it's only going to get larger. Brand loyalty and brands. I mean, I've built a whole business around this called Science Magic Studios, which I co-founded. I'm not involved in running it, but Tarek, who is the president of Science Magic Studios, he broke new ground as well, because he realized that there was something called phygital, where basically you could have digital manifestation of physical goods, which is Adidas trainers. And how could you then partner with other Web3 communities? How can you build a community around this? I mean, people are already trading Nike trainers and Adidas trainers. So why not give them digital things to trade as well? Okay, that's a really interesting concept. And we've seen people like Balenciaga doing similar in the fashion industry, Dolce & Gabbana and others. The fashion people are coming into this space too, and they're realizing that, well, if I want to wear something online as part of my digital identity, why would I not have a Gucci thing if Gucci is one of the brands that I like? It also could be digitally native ones that have never had physical product. All of these are possible. There's the interaction where you get the NFT and it gives you the physical, and Dolce & Gabbana have done that too. We've seen the crossover with Tiffany as well. We've seen so many developments happening all at the same time using this NFT technology. It's fascinating to see. This is this applications layer, the consumer layer, the broad layer, and it's still pretty early days. But I think it's much bigger than all of that too. I think Web3 is an incredibly powerful business model. It's probably the most powerful business model I've ever seen. And that goes back to network effects. So if you remember, I've talked a lot about the network effects, Metcalfe's law of owning cryptocurrencies. Why does it work so much? Because it's behavioral economics 101.
Here we go.
If you have incentivization to help promote something, you will do so. And if the better it goes, the more you get, then even better. So, if you're a salesman, you get paid to sell something, a car, but you don't get paid the upside of Tesla over time growing as a company. You have to be a shareholder for that. So with Facebook, the shareholders got rich because they developed an incredibly important network, one of the biggest networks on Earth. So that meta network is Instagram, Facebook, WhatsApp. Okay. So we got to use the utility of these platforms. We can connect with friends and do all the things that we want to on their network. We can advertise our businesses. We can do all sorts, communicate with everybody. Okay, great. And then they monetized us with advertising. So they took the lion's share of the revenue and the shareholders got rich and we didn't. Okay, I mean, that's fine. It's a business. They can do what they want. But this new model, imagine if everybody who had gone onto Facebook in the early days or into WhatsApp got given shares. Then imagine how fast the adoption would have been and how broad it would have been and what it would have meant. It could have been an enormously valuable network, even more so than the $1 trillion or whatever it did at peak after prior to the big sell-off it's just had. What happens if Google had a token? What would that mean? Now, that's what's going on with NFTs. They're allowing you to participate in these other networks. Just because some have 10,000 doesn't mean they can't have 1 million NFTs. And as people like Solana roll out new technologies to allow it, we'll see much more scaled NFTs, Polygon too. And I think that becomes really interesting in those network states ideas, that we can do really, really big things with all of this. So once we start thinking about that, we realize that as the technology gets cheaper and more efficient to create NFTs at scale, we start opening up the world of contracts themselves. The Web3 business model now means that your customers are part owners of your business in a certain respect. It's not an ownership like a share, but it's a participation of the network, and they get utility for doing that. So that means you now have a direct connection with your customer, much like the music artist or the visual artist has by selling NFTs. They now have a direct connection with their audience, and therefore they can capture more of a lion's share of the revenues without paying third parties, be it Ticketmaster or being Live Nation, or be it Google or Facebook or advertising agencies or high frequency traders in the advertising markets and all of these other people that take about 80% of the economics. People who design the contracts, the lawyers, the accountants, all of that stuff can all go away. So it becomes this very powerful relationship. You have a direct relationship with your community, which is the new word for marketing, because you don't have customers anymore because they're actually part of your business. You need to get your head around that. We've been like that for a long time at Real Vision. It's a very natural state for us. Community is what we truly believe in, and that means everybody has to participate and help each other in growing it to build out the utility for everybody else. So the community element of Web3 is groundbreaking for marketers, because suddenly you're not just selling to people, you're bringing them to join you in your product mission. And I think we're going to see enormous changes in how the world works. And what you're doing is you're making two things a reality. One is creating culture as an asset class. You can invest in culture. Like I've talked about this at length. What is the cultural value of Disney? It's probably a couple of $1 trillion, probably the biggest brand in the world, maybe of all time. I don't know, but certainly culturally relevant brand. Coca-Cola may have been culturally relevant in the past, but it's less so now. Well, Disney is still culturally relevant to billions of people around the world. Okay, to have a part of that ecosystem, that's valuable. So culture becomes an asset. The same with clothing, same with music, same with sports, same with all of this. It's culture, culture, culture. Web3 enables culture, which is why Rec Guy and all of these things are cultural, and that's my Rec Guy behind me, are all cultural phenomena, as well as digital phenomena and art phenomena and all of the other things, technology. And the other element outside of culture is that these things are intangibles, brand and culture. What that means is they don't appear on your balance sheet. They don't have real value for you because you can't measure them. So you just put some fake number there, doesn't mean anything, and people kind of ignore it. But when you tokenize it, it has a real value on your balance sheet. So that makes companies much more valuable. So it unlocks hidden value in the system, which is an extraordinary thing. It just accrues. So that is another big unlock for brands and anybody else. You get to monetize your culture, monetize your brand, and share it with your community. And that creates network effects that makes these things grow much, much faster. And we will see some shockingly fast brands. Go back to the example of Yuga. Yuga was probably the fastest appreciation of value for any company or project in history. I don't know. In the first year and a half, it did something like 250,000%. I mean, simply mind-boggling. You know, and I think we'll see things like some of these new AI open source networks, maybe tokenize the network there, where you can participate in the network, you pay with the tokens to use the network, use the data, and maybe if you supply data to the network, you can get paid in tokens too. And that means society at large can participate in these giant networks. Now, that's probably more of a community token, cryptocurrency utility token than it is an NFT because of the scale of something like that. But NFTs get really scaled when you start talking about contracts overall. So contracts overall, airline tickets. Right now, it's so inefficient with airline tickets. There's gatekeepers, you can't sell them, you have to beg the airline for a refund. Why can't my airline ticket be an NFT? And if I can't catch that flight, you can buy it straight from me and the right to transfer. Well, that's easily possible with the technology, and it would make it much more frictionless. Airlines wouldn't have empty seats. We could figure out much more efficient pricing mechanisms, and you create trading markets around stuff as well. So there's liquidity provision as and when you need it. So I think airline tickets is a really, really great way. Hotel rooms, another no-brainer. Punk 6529 and myself talked about this. is hotel rooms are wildly inefficient. You have to use these centralized websites. Everybody charges a commission from you. It's a relatively large commission. It's an opaque world, different pricing everywhere. And also, if you don't go because suddenly your trip gets cancelled, you never get a refund. The hotel ends up with not somebody in their room, which means that somebody's not ordering wine at the bar and ordering a burger and doing all the stuff that you do when you're at a hotel. So they lose revenue. So it's inefficient. So everybody's incentivized here as well to fill those hotel rooms. And therefore, if I could sell my NFT of my hotel room, why the hell not? I think train tickets, airline tickets, anything, restaurant seats, hot restaurant seats, why the hell not? Why would you not have NFTs? It's a really efficient way. Exhibitions, anything can have this. Insurance contracts, particularly standardized ones, car insurance, everything else, they can transfer with the car. Or if you sell your car, you can sell the same insurance to somebody else who's got the same car, or whatever the mechanism is to change that. Or maybe you can change the contractual terms by changing the car, and the smart contract updates. There's so much efficiency in the system, internet permissioning, moving around, digital ID, all of that kind of stuff. Hotel keys, car documentation. We're already seeing that in California, experimenting on Tezos. Real estate. Everybody's waiting for that to happen. We're already seeing the nascent signs of real estate becoming NFTs, and you can then transfer it around with much ease. Any certification, your university certificate, any knowledge, any proof of knowledge, everything, that can all be done as an NFT. Why the hell not? It's much more verifiable. Using things like soulbound tokens as well, where it sticks with you for life and you can't sell it because it's your certificate of having a bachelor's degree or whatever it may be. So super interesting. You know, a lot of your documentation, your passport, what is that but an NFT? So I do think this is all coming. I think I'm seeing supply chains moving to NFTs. I've already seen it for the spirits industry, the wine industry, the beer industry, where you can buy and sell inventory using NFTs, gives you certain rights, and you can sell it on if you don't use it. So you can buy more than you need. Let's say you've got a big event. Let's say it's the America's Cup and it's in Sydney, and you don't know how much beer you need to order because you don't know how big the success is. So you order the NFTs, and therefore you can then return it back down the value chain quickly without having to physically take it, don't need all of this, send it back to the supplier. The supplier takes a haircut on it, sends it back to somebody else who end up with excess inventory. All of this can clear in a much more efficient way. And I'm seeing all sorts of things. Medical records, employment histories, driving licenses. I mean, any single thing is an NFT. And then we talk about finance. Finance, my word is my bond. That's how the City of London started. And then it turned into a ledger system. I bought that, you sold that. And then that's become hugely inefficient, but it's on electronic databases now. But it still takes 2 or 3 days to settle stuff. But if we move to an NFT-based system, it's instantaneous. So now if we put securities and derivatives, this is 4 quadrillion, 1 quadrillion, whatever the number is of derivatives, FX contracts, all of these different types, interest rate contracts, some of them are standardized, so that's easy for NFTs at scale. Others are unique, and NFTs can deal with unique assets too. All of this can then be settled instantaneously. Now, there's hundreds of billions of dollars tied up in the T+2, T+1, whatever it is, settlement system. All of the billions of dollars where people are earning interest off the back of us, and it's trapped capital. That trapped capital, which probably ends up being trillions of dollars a year, comes flooding into the system. So you're making the entire system more efficient. We can also get rid of the amount of legal costs and accounting costs, because all of this is recordable. The smart contracts automatically settle stuff. So it changes the nature of how we do business, and that frees up more capital. It's more efficient use of capital. I mean, so think of a house, how inefficient a use of time and capital that is with some standard transaction, which is buying and selling a house. Like, things don't really change. You pay the real estate agent, you pay maybe a notary, depending where you are, you pay a lawyer, the other party pays a lawyer, pays notary fees, accounting, taxation, All of it. It's ridiculous. The technology solves all of this. So out of this great blockchain technology came the application layer of NFTs. The application layer of NFTs started with digital art. Then it moved into communities. Communities unlocked a ridiculously large new business model and a way for us all to create societies online with meaning and purpose and value. It allows our online assets to have a value, be transferable, be immutable. All of the elements of what blockchain does is groundbreaking. And then once you've got those elements and you've got community and you build things out, build whole new business models out of it, and you do things together with your customers who are now your community, they're all part of the same journey together, that unlocks this whole Web3 business. And it gets rid of middlemen and gives the power back to creators and power back to companies and takes layers of money out of the system and gives it back to everybody. Okay, that's incredibly powerful. But then it's even bigger when we start thinking about how we can use any contract in the world and free up all of the capital that's frozen in, whether it's implicit time to get stuff done or the actual cost of doing business. All of the people who make money off the side of it from a transaction between you and I, that all goes away. The whole securities industry, how this whole thing functions, that all goes onto blockchain. And NFTs are the big unlock. It's so big that none of you yet have got your head around it, and even I haven't. We don't know the number of applications and the innovations that are going to come, but I know that so many people working on it. And I think it's really important for all of us to get involved in this, because really what it is Punk 6529's battle of our future. Firstly, we've got the battle with AI. How do we know who's who and what's what? But secondly, we've got the battle with our place in this new digital society. Does the power accrue to the few, or does it accrue to the many? We have a chance of rewriting history here, rewriting history in the future. By making the steps to create a Web3 environment and making it bigger and broader and accessible and abstracting away the complications of wallets and all of this stuff, making it easy. Those things are coming. And it's going to explode in ways, as I said, we don't understand. But if we all need to play our part in pushing it forward, because it is so important for us to own our lives in this digital world. We don't want to be the slaves to giant corporations. Now, what's great is I know a lot of these big Web2 giants, really good people work there. They're really smart and they get it too. They understand that there is a revolution taking place, and this is a revolution, and that their business model will be under pressure. They understand, but they've got a hard job too. They've got shareholders and they've got existing business models that are going to have to change. So somehow they have to find a balance of introducing the Web3, which is going to be very powerful for them too, and creating new revenue opportunities for them and all the participants in that network, whilst sunsetting their existing business. And that's a hard thing to do. We've seen Facebook make a bigger stab at it with their metaverse project.
See, that's what I'm talking about. They know it. The Facebooks, the Twitters, the Japanese corporations, the Chinese corporations, all these corporations know it. But the general public doesn't know it yet. And that's the opportunity right there. Right there. It's either going to be us teaching the general population in local areas and online. That's why I tell you guys to share your app about the Founders Group. Tell the people you love, join the Founders Group, because We're at war with the corporations now. It's who shares it sooner. That's why every single one of you should be sharing your Founders Group link. We shouldn't have one membership left. We can't. Because the Founders Group and the Venture Capital Fund, those are the people that are going to fund the local revolutions and earn the value of the adoption of the technology. That's why I tell everyone, you have to come to the events so you understand what's going on in the war. In either we do it or they do it. And if they do it, we're slaves. If we do it, we're free. Your freedom depends on you sharing the information, the adoption, the opportunity with your friends. If you're a Founders Group member and you only own one share, that's fine. But you're allowed to own 4. What if you buy 3 more now, hold them for 2 years, and then resell them when the network is 8 times as large, 12 times as large, 150 times as large? This is what I'm talking about, folks. It's not if it's going to happen. It's if it's going to happen to you. If you're going to sit there and go, nah, this seems risky, I'm going to sit it out. Sit out what? What are you going to sit out? You think you think you and your children are not going to be involved in the future economy? The question is, are you going to own it, or is it going to own you? You choose. I've made my choice. I'm going to own it. It's not going to own me. Every single one of you should be at the Founders Group in St. Louis. There's 80 tickets left, I think. Get your friends, like-minded individuals. Get them there. Share the link with them. Like I said, either you own it or it owns you. Your choice. I'm giving you the tools, the Founders Group, the Bitcoin Pin Crypto Club. I'm going to give you the tools. You just have to do it. You have to show up. Yes, this is the easier way of fighting is economic. Yeah. And if you look at the ticket price of the Founders Worldwide event and you go, man, I don't know. It seems a little steep. How much is a franchise? How much did you pay for college? How well that do? You think that owning part of the new economy is free? No, it takes money and a little bit to do it. You either invest in you owning it or just save that money and you'll wind up paying them when they own it. I know people that will pay $1,200 for an iPhone, but won't get a Founders Group share. They're like, well, geez, that's like $400. You just paid $1,200 for a cell phone. I don't understand how some people think, but the world needs fucking ditch diggers, I guess. All right, everyone. We got about 5 more minutes and then we're done.
To explode in ways, as I said, we don't understand. But if we all need to play our part in pushing it forward, because it is so important for us to own our lives in this digital world. We don't want to be the slaves to giant corporations. Now, what's great is I know a lot of these big Web 2 giants, really good people work there. They're really smart and they get it too. They understand that there is a revolution taking place, and this is a revolution, and that their business model will be under pressure. They understand, but they've got a hard job too. They've got shareholders and they've got existing business models that are going to have to change. So somehow they have to find a balance of introducing the Web3, which is going to be very powerful for them too, and creating new revenue opportunities for them and all the participants in that network, whilst sunsetting their existing business. And that's a hard thing to do. We've seen Facebook make a bigger stab at it with their metaverse project, and you've seen that sunset period. Shareholders didn't like that, and that's hard. But Mark Zuckerberg owns most of the voting shares, so he can get around it. And they create so much cash anyway that they can do it and take the risk. Others can't. But I feel really strongly about it, and I've been talking about this for a long time. Any of you who've been following me have understood the journey of where I think this is going and how.
Okay, guys, we're going to wrap up. It's almost 9. Do yourself a favor. Click the link under here. Come to the event in St. Louis. Bring your friends. There's 80 tickets left, I think, if that. Like Raul just said, you're either going to be a slave to it or you're going to own it. There is no middleman anymore. Don't be a slave. Get off your ass and earn your freedom. Everybody, I love you guys. I'll see you tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.